All right. I think I've given enough time thinking about this. Let's dive right into it. And this is one of these sort of ad hoc videos because somebody forwarded me Rich Cooper's video. What's funny is I think a lot of us we all see the same videos because they all come up in our feeds, especially when it comes to the people that we're subscribed to. But it's just funny how people like I'll look at stuff and people are like, "Oh, I just want to watch that video," and they'll send me stuff that was already in my feed and was already in my recommendeds. But anyway, so Rich Cooper put out a video called "Why Men Aren't Men Anymore," and I listened to it, and I think his video misses the mark. And I think the problem is, because Rich Cooper, he's an older guy, clearly in his whatever 50s or 60s. I don't know how old Rich Cooper is. And this is on Rich Cooper Clips. So this is on his smaller channel. And I think this is where classic white male conservatism runs into a wall with the manosphere. Now, I do understand, the pushback on parts of the manosphere that come off as whiny and complaining and, kind of get into the black pill territory. But, there's reasons why those segments exist. And simply saying to men in the manosphere that they need to man up, it totally misses a lot. Like, for example, you cannot alpha your way through feminism. Like, Rich Cooper will talk about how, like, in one breath he says, enjoy the decline. And then the next breath, he acts like young men should be alphaing their way through feminism. I'm like, you can't alpha your way through feminism. Again, like the statements that he makes presume that okay, we all acknowledge the dating market, how females are wired, and how women are out here hypergamous. Those of us who are normal are not faulting women for that. What we're faulting is the overall structure of society and how society has basically demonized masculinity into oblivion. And then there's also all these, tools available, for women and accessibility, sexual market value, and all this other crap that is throwing everything off balance, to where now it's almost like we've reverted back to, and Rich Cooper brought this up in his video of, Genghis Khan and, only 25% of men actually got to reproduce and you died in ancient times at a very early age. And so like, I'm like, that's not a solution, my man. I'm like, what you're saying. See, now we're back to the, again, I keep trying to tell young white men this, like, what these older white men are telling you is essentially what they we're running around telling, young black men. Personal responsibility. It's all about hard work. This is just the way things are. And if you're not in such and such position and I just so happen to be up here, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. And these are just things that you have to accept, when it comes to society. And it's like you always get these like older white men that try to convince younger men of that, even though it wasn't like that when they were coming up. Like there's a comment coming from uh this guy's his name is PP. It just says PP. It says 2 days ago. And this is a kick-ass comment. The comment says, what you guys don't understand is that for a majority of your life, you lived in more normal times. Men in their 40s and 50s or even 30s grew up in more normal times. Things have gone very different in the last 15 years. It's not easy for the younger guys. It is way easier to navigate this when this craziness started to happen in your 30s when you were formed as a man. As it should say, as an older millennial, I don't envy guys in their 20s right now. So basically, what he's saying is, like, folks like Rich Cooper and all these older, white male gurus that are online that are giving their 2 cents about manhood, like, they grew up when there was no social media. They grew up when, that you did, interact with women, face to face at bars or clubs or the gym, or, there was that type of interaction. There wasn't, this sort of, this, I don't even want to call it sanitized. It's this totally warped way that people go about interacting with each other via, social media and all this, what do you want to call that? Social communication, where, you again essentially have 100% of women who only want to get with 10% of dudes. And many of the 10% of dudes, the men that are lucky enough to be in that position, their attitude is that they will, run through as many women as possible until they get tired of it or find the woman that they want to settle down with or never settle down, but then toss these men back to the low value or low status males, and that, those men should basically just simply accept that, marry these women that, have been deemed thoughts or whatever, and that everybody should be cool with that. And, the women, they think that, their sexual history shouldn't matter. And a lot of, young men that, because young men are at the bottom of the totem pole, right? They men have to build their reputation, they have to build their careers, they have to build their status, they have to earn their position. And they're saying, I'm not busting my ass and doing all this work and earning my position for a bunch of freaking thought pockets. I'm not doing that. Now, and the thing is, as I've said, a lot of this shit, part of the problem with social media is it's in everybody's face now. I like what the other guy on the clip said, which is where he said that, the thing is, before you had local dating markets. There was a dating market in Colorado. There was a dating market in New Jersey. There was a dating market in New York. There was a dating market in LA. But now with social media, it's all one big dating market, and women can just zero in right on the guys that are at the top. And then to exacerbate the problem, we have this, this shit economy started back in, 2009 with the financial crisis. We've had, decades of stagnant wages, globalization, deindustrialization, loss of manufacturing jobs. And now, essentially young men are being told, and I'm saying the avenues of doing it are there, but even sometimes I'm just like, okay, so we're basically going to tell everybody that, you got to have 5 streams of income and make your social media accounts and, come up with some clever, sophisticated way to make money, because basically, that model of, going off somewhere and working 30 years at a company and being able to purchase a home and provide a middle class lifestyle is dead. And my attitude is like, okay, but why don't you just say that? Right? But America has spent decades selling people this American dream, this Homer Simpson scenario of, having, 3 kids, a stay-at-home wife, and living in the suburbs and still, being able to, comfortably live this middle-class lifestyle. Now you're telling young men that that's gone. And the thing is what I see from the older white men, I'm like, sometimes, we can talk about racism, and I can talk about my true feelings about the system of white supremacy and say, when you see your enemy making a mistake, don't interrupt them. But sometimes, just from a purely intellectual, standpoint of, having these conversations, I'm like, what? I don't know what the fuck white men are doing. What these elite older white men are doing. Because it's like, it's their, like, when they're talking all this shit, like, oh, there's just this low value population. They are talking about their sons and their grandsons. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, we got this, like, what seems to be this rise of white men going off and shooting the place up, shooting malls up. I'm like, you're going to see more of that. You're going to see more domestic terrorism, in my opinion, in the next, 5 to 10 years. You're going to see more of that. Because essentially, folks like Rich Cooper, when they want to come in, and so it's just funny to me because they said the same thing to the black community. When we were the canaries in the coal mine, right? Discrimination, redlining, blockbusting, Jim Crow, eminent domain, urban renewal, convict leasing, COINTELPRO, mass incarceration, CIA dumping drugs in the black community, 1994. I mean, we are the canaries of all this shit that happened to us. Purging of the black community, all this stuff I talk about. Right? Tulsa, Elaine, Arkansas, Ocoee, Florida, Springfield, Illinois, Omaha, Nebraska, Slocum, Texas, all these places, purged, black community, constantly put down, right? And so, you get to the 80s, you get black men that are like, nah, man, we already saw our grandparents and great-grandparents, they marched and everything, and white America still gave them their ass to kiss. So now we going to go out here, sell these drugs, get it however we can get it, murder, mayhem, death, kill, whatever, and that's what they're doing. And the irony is, white men in their quest to demonize black men have basically helped facilitate this underworld of a street culture that even young white girls can't stay away from. They think it's fucking sexy, right? And so you end up with this, this two ends of the spectrum when it comes to the men that are actually sexually desirable. Obviously, the top 10% at the top, but then you have this. It's not just the 10% at the bottom. No, they're actually in the underworld. They're actually on the outside of the entire system. They're, what do they call those? The Sigma males or whatever. Like basically the whole criminal underworld, or would arguably, be categorized underneath the Sigma male, umbrella, of just like they're just operating outside the confines of the system. But what I'm saying about these, these, whatever you want to call it, these older white males that seemingly, that they want to push this, personal responsibility thing to death, even at the expense of their own children, which I still I'm perplexed about and find strange, especially if you're trying to maintain the system of white supremacy. And I'm like, you guys are playing with some serious fire. And telling these, young white men that, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. And you gotta, even though even the white, elite white men have made millions and millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, not even billions of dollars off of the very infrastructure that has totally ruined the sexual market. The people who tapped into the .com bubble and the social media bubble and all that made insane amounts of money. And that has virtually disincentivized young men to go out here and be productive. Like I said, you can't alpha male your way through feminism. You can't productive your way through feminism. Because if women want power, they don't just want to get with your program. Oh, let me get with the alphaist of alpha. I'm not saying that there aren't women out there that are like that, but if they want power themselves, nothing that you can offer them is going to suffice. Because as I said in my other video, a freaking diamond encrusted passenger seat is still a passenger seat. Now, I don't know how many white women are on that. I was watching a video from Dr. T. Hassan Johnson, and, and he actually, I liked how he said it. He's like, yeah, white women have a love-hate relationship with black women, where they compete with black women in a sense. They look up to, black women's independence because, the black men have been, marginalized and discriminated against. So we don't have the same tools that, the more white men, I should say, I don't want to say the collective of white men, but more white men that are in that middle to upper class are able to, use to thwart, feminism. The only time that those guys get caught is essentially in the court system with divorce court and child custody and all that other stuff. That's where they get their money taken, like, Jeff Bezos' ex-wife taking his money and stuff like that. But those men are still in the position, you see. But Dr. T. Hazan Johnson made the point that, white women envy black women in that regard, but at the same time, they also know that if they were to do what black women are doing, that their community might end up looking like the black community, and they don't want that. Like I said, I wrote underneath Shay Shardae's video where she was talking about white women and how they vote, and I just said point blank, period. And this one is, this is directly from Captain Solo. The white women are not going to. Married white women vote in the interest of their husband because their husband's interests are their interest. Okay, if their husband owns businesses or corporations, then obviously if he gets a tax break, that tax break goes to her, and then he can go off and get that Escalade that she wanted. You see, but for single women out there, and this includes white women, they want money from the government directly, right? Which helps them to be independent of a man and not need a man because, again, women are not, the most productive force in society. And so they need government to come through and subsidize, their quality of life or forcibly extract resources, from men. And so we have this situation where now men, they see all of this. They see the fact that, they're never going to have a house. They're never going to be able to pay down, if they have student loan debt, their student loan debt. Women only want the top 10%. All Rich Cooper is saying is, you got to alpha your way through it. I'm like, you got women who don't want to, cooperate, with men. The only way that they're going to, quote unquote, submit or get with a man's program is if he has an insane amount of money, which will only, which is only beneficial to her because it allows her to, basically get resources on her exit whenever she so decides, to exit. But, it's like, Rich Cooper and whoever this other guy he had on his show are just up there saying that, you got to alpha your way through it. And I think a lot of it has to do with the way that white conservative men, because they hate the woke left, they hate woke culture, they hate woke this, woke that, Black Lives Matter is a problem, and because I've seen Rich Cooper, it's just like undead chronic. They take these sneak bigoted shots, at basically anything on the left, and in order to fix this problem at the collective level, it would take a collective solution. But conservatives don't like anything collective. They think that that's socialism or that's communism or that's the woke leftist, thing. And they think that screaming personal responsibility from the mountaintop, is how we resolve these. Men just need to be men. They need to double down on manhood and they need to be men and they need to go out here, even though I'm not paying anybody. I'm not going to pay anybody. So everything just simply becomes don't work for anybody, which again, young men are pretty much already doing. They're talking about young men not being in the workforce, so they're not working, right? And then Rich Cooper will come in and say, you got to have 5 streams of income and do all this, stuff online, which I'm not saying it can't be done, but I'm saying the vast majority of people don't have that capacity. The vast majority of people don't even have the capacity to go to a 4-year institution in college, even if they had the resources to do so. They're not college material. They're not graduate material. That's why they have, whether it's the SAT or the GMAT or the MCAT, to get into medical school or whatever it may be. That's why they have these basically entrance level exams to see where you are. Even the military, to see where they want to put somebody in, where they, what's your MOS. Everybody doesn't have that capacity. And there's more people that don't have the capacity than they do. And I think the biggest problem now is the fact that they're self-aware. So, just like with Andrew Tate, and they had to silence him and get rid of him because he was awaking men. Men can not be the sharpest tools in the drawer and still feel that way. They can still feel like I'm getting the short end of the stick. The ugly reality is that the way that the white elite set it up is young men were never supposed to wake up from that delusion. White, especially young white men, they were supposed to go out here and believe in personal responsibility it to death. But see, that can only be maintained if young white men still were able to have, significantly more than, let's say, your average black guy. Right? I don't know how, like, a lot of white people get caught up in this shit. They drink the Kool-Aid, or excuse me, the Snapple. Y'all drink the Snapple. You believe in, like, the whole idea. Like, the white middle class was created. You know what I mean? Government, subsidized shit, Levittowns, the New Deal, all this sort of stuff. I mean, go over there and watch Johnny Harris and him talk about, all the bullshit about how the government basically created all this bullshit to get people to buy milk and drink milk and freaking buy bananas and put in, a banana split sundae and all this other shit, and banana cake and banana this and banana that, just so that these corporations that were exploiting other places could get, American consumers to buy their products to make them filthy rich. As I've said numerous times, classism comes before racism. But in my opinion, sometimes I can't separate out the people who really believe this shit versus the older white men who are just exploitative of their own offspring. Where they know it's bullshit, but they're still going to sell it. And when you get the people who actually believe the bullshit, they're so anti the left, anti anything that even remotely looks like the woke or socialism or communism or anything that would implement a societal change. They're so anti that the only thing that they have to say to young white men, even though they've set this system up, which makes it virtually impossible for them to get their lives started, young guys that are in their 20s, is to just throw around, personal responsibility, because they're not going to implement anything, because that looks too much like what the left is demanding. We want these changes and we want those changes, and it looks too much like what the feminists are demanding. And so the only thing they have to say to young white men is essentially, you need to basically go out here and grit and bear it. You need to man up. You need to, go out here and, pick heavy shit up and put it down and get more muscles and all that other shit. That's still not going to change the fact that these white employers don't want to pay anybody. That's still not going to change the fact that they've essentially eliminated pensions and given people these bullshit ass 401ks. That's not going to change the fact that housing prices are through the roof and nobody can afford it, and you got Blackstone out here buying up all the property. That's not going to change that fact. Simply saying white men need to man up. It's not going to change the current, sexual market of, 100% of women only want to get with 10% of dudes. Men can fight all they want to get in that top 10%. That top 10% will still remain that top 10%. The problem is you don't have average women wanting to get with average men. That's the problem. So at the end of the day, this society, we're looking at the end of Rome in the face. This society will collapse because it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. You can't even have, America is like, America's a superpower. America ain't going to be a superpower for long. I don't know if you've all been looking at the stats when it comes to them trying to find, soldiers for their units and shit. Oh, they're definitely going to sit around and reconsider Boston Dynamics and try to get those robots to basically be the soldiers. It'll be looking like Elysium out this bitch. because they're not, because if men don't qualify for women, if they're not able to attract women, they're not producing families. If they're not producing families, they're not producing the next generation of young men who will be military aged young men to go off and fight wars like what the U.S. and China are about to engage in over Taiwan. This is why you see all this World War III talk between Russia, China, and the U.S., because they have dwindling populations. You see? Because what doesn't look like it affects anybody now are the decline in birth rates that you see today, that you don't feel today, will most certainly have an impact on us 20 years from now. We will have an aging population like Japan because of, people not feeling comfortable having children. They delay having children or don't have children at all. So you'll have a population of growing elderly people and not enough young people. Therefore, GDP will decline. All the spin-offs of this shit. And I'm not even an economist, and I know economists are listening to this. Clearly, you aren't, right? But I'm saying I know enough about it to know that these are the things that matter in the long run. So what you're looking at is you're looking at a long-term decline, because there's no boom. I mean, hell, you don't even have young people to be the next generation of purchasing all those items. It's just not simply, there's not going to be enough people to go around. And all of this is tied back to, this experiment, so to speak, of Western society basically creating this atmosphere where women only want a small percentage of dudes. And like I said, the whole thing is completely broken. The men in the middle, the men that would be your most productive individuals, and when the men that try to follow the society's ethos, they're not criminal, but they're not elite either. They're the ones that seemingly aren't producing any of the children. You got the black community, looking at the numbers, it looks like we got 13% of the men producing 76% of the children. 55% of black men are not married and don't have any children, and 30% are married. So where are all these illegitimate children coming from? A very small percentage of black men in the community that black women deem to be desirable and attractive. And the same thing is going on in the white community. All this stuff about, 30% of young zillennials are not having sex. I don't know how much that includes, black people, but that's what the numbers are. So Rich Cooper's whole statement of like, you can alpha your way through that. Oh, you just got to go out here and you got to grind, and instead of feeling sorry for yourself and this, that, and like, I know it seems really inspirational to sit there and say that to somebody, but people are out here really doing the math on the shit. They're doing the math on it. No matter what Rich Cooper says, is not going to change the reality of, the rent is too damn high. The fact that corporations don't want to pay people. The fact that, all those IT people with, kick-ass degrees, hellified, computer science, computer engineering skills are, getting kicked out of their jobs and stuff like that because, companies are preparing for a major contraction. Like, at the end of the day, for me, I'm like, as I said before, I don't care what type of mental gymnastics you want to do. If young men are not being paid enough to be gainfully employed to the point that they're not attractive to females, then you don't have a starting point for your society. And the white male conservatives, especially these, over 50 guys, man, these guys are just ridiculous with their shit. That's why you get all this okay boomer talk. Okay, boomer. That's why you get people jumping up and saying, and actually they're not boomers, they're actually Gen Xers. You know what I mean? But that's why you get people jumping up and saying that shit. So they were born from like 1968 to the early 80s. And then after that would be the millennials. But like their whole idea that they have, like when the world was so much different, where especially starting with the silent generation. I mean, they came back from World War II, and subsidized housing from the federal government, 30-year mortgages, and pensions, full medical and dental. They went off, and all you had to do was get up and go to work every day. I mean, literally, like it's like you couldn't fail. Especially if you were a white man at that time, like you couldn't fail. But that's not the reality for young men today, especially young white men. Which I don't know what young white men are. I mean, young white men are like confused right now. You know what I mean? Like I joke, they go over there, they're fucking around with Vikings. They go join white nationalist groups like Patriot Front, want to blame everybody else except for the people that have all the power that look like them, right? We was Vikings and shit. They running around. They want to be Vikings. What other shit are they doing? Joining militias. They want to be a part of the militia. They join some government group, right? They join QAnon. They want to talk about, satanic, freaking child molesting, baby rituals or some shit like that. They want to talk about Jeffrey Epstein. Like, they got all type of conspiracy theory shit. They're all over the fucking place. Some guys are hitting the gym. Some guys are like, yeah, pick heavy shit up like Rich Cooper says and put it down. If I get these muscles, get my finances up, do this and do that. Yeah, and they might be able to eke something out. But it still doesn't change the overall situation of how social media has changed the sexual markets, and the fact that we are now a deindustrialized nation, and the fact that wages have stayed stagnant, and the fact that nobody's working for corporations for 30 years, and people have to change jobs every 2 years if they want some sort of growth, and the fact that the pricing of houses are stupid. Like, there's like, seriously, like, do any of these like 50+ year old men, do they ever stop and say to themselves, like, damn, if I was 20, like, how the hell would I get my life started, when the very springboards that they had growing up in order to make the moves that they made and got to where they got are no longer there? You know what I'm saying? Like when I see all this shit, like, people like having to make YouTube channels to make income, and don't get it wrong, it can be a lucrative career. But I'm saying, like, you got to recognize, like, something's wrong. You even got just Google why I quit medicine. The number of physicians that are quitting medicine. These are people that are making anywhere from, freaking 200,000 to, almost $1 million, depending on what their field is. And they're like, why I quit medicine and why I'm now going to be a pontificator on YouTube or TikTok or whatever the hell it is. How many people you got out here living the van life? You know what I'm saying? Like, how many people you got here, people with skills, people with degrees, people with knowledge, and they're out here, trying to find a way out of the matrix. Sooner or later, you're going to have to acknowledge that there's something wrong with the matrix, and that, that just like a broken clock, even the woke people are right twice a day. No matter how much you don't like the woke people, I can openly acknowledge, there's a lot of, like, when conservatives talk, Yeah, I can look past the bigotry and a lot of the bullshit that I hear coming out of Fox News and whatnot, but every so often the clock is right twice a day. You know what I mean? I don't agree with all the LGBTQRXYZ shit. I don't believe with the alphabet gang. You know what I mean? I believe that marriage is between a man and a woman, and then we should have a whole lot more nuclear families, and that the single mom situation is a bunch of bullshit. That's what I think. Wouldn't that put me right there in the conservative bin? Right? But as you all know, like I'm an atheist and I believe that freaking religion is simply a mechanism of control and tries to get people to conform to codes and conduct of behavior without, actually providing the necessary tangibles that allow people to be the good people in this world, that they would otherwise be if they actually had those necessary tools. So right now, there as resources are being taken away, the powers that be are trying to whittle people down to nothing. Oh, here's some God. Here's the Bible. Yes. Just, now follow those rules and fall in line, right? That's a way to, keep, again, it's like what Malcolm X said. They got the Novocaine in your mouth. That way, when they're pulling your teeth, you don't fight back, right? And so, all this talk about, you need to man up, you need to man up, you need to man up with young men, you know what I mean? Meanwhile, it's so funny because notice how they tell men that they need to man up at the same time that they slam men and make everything about men is, men are the problem and everything about manhood is toxic and all this other shit. And then, you got all this feminism out here. Oh, we got careers and we're boss babes and all this other shit. And then when they hit the wall, then they're like, oh, I want to get married and settle down. Why don't these men man up? Which is one of the things that, Rich addressed in his video. Just acknowledging that because he did bring that up in the video. But I would, take it a step further. Like even like a lot of you notice like all these articles, even though shit about Zoomers or Zillennials not having way less sex than anybody. Even though they have all this social media, you would think they would allow guys to instantaneously slide into DMs. No, not when you have 100% of women who only want 10% of dudes. Guys that have flashy shit on their social media. Right? So what was I about to say about that? There was something about to say about that, about me taking it a step further. There was something I was going to say and it just slipped my mind. What was I going to say about taking it a step further with what I noticed about all these articles is like the articles always seem to frame men as the problem. Like women are unhappy and single because men won't man up. Right? Like, or if men are checking out of society, it's because there's something wrong with men. Like these are all like conservative talking points. And like I said before, I really do think that white men back themselves into a corner because they want to keep all like it's like let's just focus on black people, right? Because black people and white people have the longest history in this country, back and forth. Black people arguing for reparations for slavery, racism, all this other shit, and white people are like, no, y'all just lazy, right? And I'm saying white men have created like this, like almost this prison for themselves. Because they go out here and they wag their finger. Oh, personal responsibility. It's all about personal responsibility. They've been saying that for decades at black people. And now the system has basically whittled their young white men down to freaking nothing. And in order to stay consistent with that Fox News narrative, now they're telling that to young white men. And I'm like, in my opinion, that's a recipe for disaster. That's a recipe for, as we've already seen, like we saw in Indiana, somebody to walk into a mall with an AR-15 and shoot the fucking place up. And even the Gen Xers and the boomers that are freaking listening to this and even talking all those stupid talking points. I'm like, motherfucker, you got daughters and other children and shit, and like a disgruntled white man, may run into your daughter while he's at the fucking mall or some shit like that. Like, you would think they would make the connection. It kind of reminds me of that movie Crash, where like everybody in the movie wasn't caring about each other, but yet their lives were still interconnected. Right? I brought this up when I brought up this scenario about like the a situation where like you'll have a bigoted white man who doesn't want to hire a black man, and then the black man, he doesn't have anything to produce for his family, and then like he starts hitting the bottle, he slaps up his wife, his son is growing up in poverty, he's angry, he goes and hits the streets and he's selling drugs, and then he gets robbed of the drugs, and then he's got to find some way to get his connect the money that fronted him the key. Otherwise, he's going to come for him because he can't go and say, oh, I lost the drugs. They're going to think you stole it and they're going to kill your ass. So then he goes out there, and worst case scenario, whenever a black person is really down and out, what their final resort is? They start going out there and jacking people. And then he goes out there and jacks, the white guy that didn't want to hire him's daughter's, Jetta, as she's driving by in some Jetta, and she gets killed. And it all stems back to the white guy with his racist views. Oh, I don't want to hire this black guy, which was, the boy's father, who ultimately ended up doing the carjacking that got the white girl killed. Like, all this shit is all connected like that, but like nobody fucking sees it like that. And like we're all in the same boat, but again, nobody sees it like that. So, I mean, to me, it's a recipe for disaster. I'm like, okay. You think you're going to keep telling these young white men that got, no access to pussy, no access to women. You know what I mean? Like, this is all this shit. Like, I mean, let them. I'm like, you really want to fuck some shit up? Yeah, go ahead and turn the porn off. Go ban porn. Go ban porn. Go do that shit off if you really want to see this motherfucker explode. Or excuse me, implode. Because that's what's going to happen. Like right now, like a lot of young white men, they still got a glimmer of hope. They're like, man, I think I'm gonna ride this white shit out. I think it's gonna help me. I mean, eventually, I think things will fix themselves. It always have. We're Americans. Apple, baseball, apple pie, in America, and a screeching bald eagle, right? Like, that's what they think. They think, shit'll course correct, and somehow we'll still be on top. That's what they think. I'm like, those white elite men don't give a fuck about you, never have. All that shit you think about preserving whiteness is an illusion. It's a hologram. It's class before race. Go back to England, it was kings, queens, nobles, and peasants. And the vast majority of you are descendant of peasants. Australia exists because it was a penal colony. Send him to Australia. No, not Australia. Anywhere but Australia. No. Australia's founding fathers were essentially fucking prisoners and shit. They were criminals. You know what I'm saying? Because nobody wanted to go down there, send you on the other side of the globe, and you're never to see England again. Please, motherfucker. That's like sending, making Mars a penal colony, and Elon Musk says, "Give me all your prisoners," and puts them on spacecrafts and says, "Your only path to freedom is to colonize Mars for me." You know what I mean? So he becomes freaking Peter Whalen from the Whalen-Yutani Corporation and shit like that, which is what essentially Elon Musk is going to be. You see, but I'm blown away, man. It's amazing because I used to think like it was just white men just being racist and they just tell black people some bullshit, but like these motherfuckers will tell their own children some bullshit. Like, that's the fascinating part. I'm like, they tell their own kids. They will look at their kids in the face and say, you need to try harder. It sounds good. It really does sound good. But that would make sense if, those elite white men weren't actively trying to hoard all of the wealth to the point that their own sons and grandsons are undesirable, or members of their own group are undesirable. Like, I'm saying, where is the white supremacy in that? Where is the tribalism and group economics in that shit? You know what I mean? I mean, if it was to be corrected, oh, without a doubt, white people would be the first one to reap the benefits of that correction before any other minority did, before black people did. But I don't see that correction coming anytime soon. I see them like literally squeezing out all of the last remnants of juice, from the orange juice. That's what I see. Or from the orange, not the last remnants of orange juice, from the orange juice. What the hell am I saying? From the orange. That's what I see. I don't see them, correcting anything, because this is essentially class warfare. And I think that the bigotry and the racism that you see, especially coming from young white men who are trying to find themselves and find an identity, will always keep, this from being corrected, because in my opinion, it can only be corrected through either organized voting or, revolution. But I highly doubt that the white male proletariat is going to form Voltron with any other proletariat. Meanwhile, the white elites will simply hoard, all of the wealth. Now, some people have argued that there will be a massive transfer of wealth when these people, die. But it's like, what are you going to do? Tell a young man that, well, don't worry, you'll be able to start your life when you're about 45 years old. when all of this gets transferred to you. Like, huh? You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, like, I don't know where all that money and value is going to go, but like I said, like the boomer generation, the Gen Xers, as well, are like the most selfish generations. They're just selfish. The way that they set everything up, and then they're just like, yeah, we're living comfortably in our retirement, or in our near retirement, or in our last years of being productive and making money, but yet young people, they can't get their lives started. I see these developments that they build, the 55 and over developments. They build these like affordable, nice houses. I mean, like they make perfect starter houses. Sit right around, maybe $250,000, right? But then when you go over and you look at the other houses, like they're not capped off. You're like, oh, you want this new house like 460? They don't even want to build like basements in houses anymore. Like they just, oh, we'll give you an extra story, right? But it's like, so then you kind of like lose the first level because there's no basement, and it's like kind of like partly a garage. Like they're building like these like either like modern townhomes with like 3-4 stories, or they're building these multi-unit like apartment complex and then slapping the word luxury on them when they're just really just regular apartments, just not in the cities, they're in the burbs. You get what I'm saying? So, I'm like, the shit is just backwards. I'm like, you're not building any homes for young people. Like you would think, if the society wants the society to grow, right? Because I've been all over this country. There's so much vacant fucking land out there. It's insane. Like there's so much untouched land in this country. It's just retarded. Like, but anyway, I'm just saying, it's like, if you don't incentivize young people to get married, start their lives, raise a family and all that other stuff, then the society and the government you're going to pay for it later. You're going to pay for it later if your population shrinks, if it goes below that, what is it, 2.1, right? Because you gotta have more than what the replacement rate, right? Because you get a man and a woman, they get together, they need to have at least 2 children in order to just maintain the population. Probably more than that, because you gotta account for infant mortality rates and all that other bullshit. But I'm just saying, 2.1 is the number. But like we're below that. Pretty much all Western society is below that. People who live in, agricultural societies, they have more kids, right? When we were agricultural society, people, they would have 8, 14 kids. If you talk to your grandparents or your great grandparents, ask them how many siblings they had. They had a fuck ton. But now people are like having 1, 2, because the cost of living is so high. And in order to maintain that a lifestyle, they have to have, they can only have that many children, 1 or 2. So, it's like the part that gets me is like when people say that they want one thing, but then they don't want to put in the input to actually facilitate that. Like I said, with the white Christians, they say that they want intact, freaking nuclear families from Leave It to Beaver in the 1950s model. They want the Wonder Years type of family, right, with a Christian moral framework. But then, they don't want to have men be gainfully employed. Right? I mean, this society just does all this like fucking with the dials and experimenting with shit. Oh yeah, we're gonna pay women more and bring women into the workforce and careers and all this other shit. But it's not like women change what they're attracted to, right? Like women still maintain their like, caveman or cave woman instincts. Like, it's like, okay, we live in modern society. You're not being chased by fucking saber-toothed tiger or woolly mammoths anymore. What do you need to do to be 6'7" for? Like what do you need to do to look like, he's fucking, like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like, what do you need some shit like that for? We live in modern times, but no, women are still attracted to that. Still attracted to the savagery, still attracted to the aggression, right? Women still want to date up, right? Even though, she makes $200,000. Like, I want to date up. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, how high do you want to go, chick? You know what I mean? Like, regardless of what the actual percentage of men in society that even make that much money. Like what the guy said in the video, the top 1%, what did he say, makes over $500,000? That doesn't even, that's not even entering the millionaire club. But yet women, we only want the 1% because I make 200. I'm like, hey, chick, I'm not telling you that you should be dating down. I'm not going to say that. But I'm like, you just got to be realistic. I'm like, you got to find more sophisticated ways of going out here and finding what you want if that's the type of money that you're making. But I'm just saying, everybody wants these things. They want all this stuff, but they don't want to put in the input. I'm talking about society as a whole. Young men need to man up. They need to do this. They need to do that. But then the employers are like, we don't want to pay anybody. We're going to put kiosk everywhere. We're gonna cut our hours. We're gonna, it's like nobody can make any money off of it, some shit like that. And then these will be the same conservative voices that will turn around and start talking about the decline of family and it's because we took prayer out of the schools. It's insane because no matter how many times I lay this out, no matter how many times I explain this, they're still going to get up there on the microphone on some Dave Ramsey shit and start talking that fucking drivel. I'm like, you still don't want to fucking pay anybody. Namely, again, the men. Right? I'm not even trying to change female nature. I'm just saying men you gotta stay ahead of women. But I acknowledge, like I said before, even that cannot overcome a woman that wants power. If a woman wants power, I mean, that's the end of the conversation. Because even if you are a wealthy man, the only thing you can do is offer her the passenger seat. And if she doesn't want to be, she literally thinks like you're going to go out here and get with her program and take her last name. I mean, some of these women might as well just say that. I think you should take my last name. They might as well just say that shit because that's what they want. But see, the thing is when those women, like, they usually won't come out and say that because they know how ridiculous they would sound. They know how many people would walk away from, which is why, a lot of the people on the far left and the super woke, that's why they want to change definitions. See, if I can dismantle the patriarchy, if we can dismantle these ideas and these concepts, right, then we can present something new. So we got to erase, erase the freaking hard drive, erase the cassette, and then we can put our own software on there, our own music on there, right? And that's what they're trying to do. And so that's why, the shit looks radical to most people. They're trying to get you to get rid of, your current belief system that is steeped in patriarchy. You see, it's essentially the same thing with the post that I just made about that might makes right thing. Oh, I understand exactly what that book is talking about. It's like like in order to think differently, you have to eliminate, what you previously believed. You at least have to open your mind, which is difficult for people to do when they already have a different framework. It's very difficult for them to do. To think in a different way. Me, you know how I do. I go, fuck it, let's go with that. Right? I'll run anybody's scenario. I'll run that motherfucker out to infinity. And then they'll start running into shit that they didn't even think all the way out, because most people, they do shut their brain off. I don't shut my brain off. So, I go way out to the outer rim and shit. I'm over there with Yoda on Dagobah and shit like that. I'm like, yeah, oh, no, I already been out there. I went all the way out there. I'm like, it doesn't look pretty. And then next thing you know, I come back into the room and I start running all these scenarios. I'm like, how's that supposed to work? Yes, and I think we should have a relationship of equality and gender equality, and men and women should be equal, and that's how everything should be played. I'm like, okay, all right, I'm with you. Hey, I'm not. Hey, don't get mad at me. I'm not shooting down your idea. I just have one question: who's going to be doing all the building? Oh, well, are you going to be out there too? We're talking equality, right? You're going to come out and you're going to build with the men, right? You're going to get in the trenches and all that stuff. Well, y'all should still do that because y'all bigger than women. And, I'm like, see, and think about that. I'm like, so let me get this right. So we're supposed to be out there in the trenches, building everything, and then we hand you over the keys in full control? Yes. I'm like, I'm not doing that. What do you mean you're not doing that? It's because you're a misogynist. I'm like, it's too much work. I'm not doing that. I'm not gonna build, especially when I know that not only I'm fuck it. I'm not even gonna say that you're incapable of building it. All I'm saying is I already know that you don't want to do it. That's what I know. So that's what I like to use against women, and I got that one directly from Captain Solo. I don't have to tell you what you are incapable of doing. I already know that y'all don't want to do that type of work. Would you rather be the one digging the ditch in the ditches, or would you rather be the one, making the men a glass of lemonade? Shit, you run that by most women. Most women will be like, oh, let me make you some lemonade because I ain't getting my hands dirty. No, thank you. That's all you got to use against them. But I'm just saying, like, that's just an example of them not running the scenario all the way out into infinity. But all that, it's just white people are funny, man. Y'all some funny motherfuckers, man. Y'all think y'all saying something. You think like you're upholding some sort of white idealism when you think that the solution to everything is to say you need to man up or you need to rise to the occasion, even though you've literally created a system where the odds are stacked against your own children. Like, that's the crazy part. Like, you set it up to where people cannot make it and then say you should overcome. What? How about you move that boulder out of the way? How about you move that obstacle out of the way? No, that sounds like socialism and communism. And this just opens up the door for further abuse. to where literally it's like somebody's like they're paying you like a penny a day and telling you that with that penny you should be able to save your way out of poverty and still maintain a middle class lifestyle, even though it's virtually it literally is impossible. It's impossible. The math ain't mathing. And see, that's to me is where like all of conservatism just completely breaks down. I'm like, it gets like, in other words, all that personal responsibility, it gets to a point where the math ain't mathing. I'm like, motherfucker, you cannot save what you don't make. What don't you get about that? And they'll try to come up with all time. I know it's inspirational. I get it. It's this thing of Mother Goose and storybooks and I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, right? And John Henry and all this other stuff. Oh, it's so great to stay positive, but eventually you get to a point where the math ain't mathing. You know what I'm saying? Like what do you think? Freaking I mean, all these all these gurus that run around talking about, how to be an alpha and going in there and telling people that this is the deal that you want and this, that, and the third. Like, what do you think happens when they see a deal and it's not beneficial to them? You see this shit on Shark Tank all the time. They don't try to willpower their way through a bad deal. They walk. They walk. But yet somehow when we get down to the freaking these scenarios of life and marriage and starting families and children and all this other stuff. Now, all of a sudden, if a dude looks up and says, this is a bad deal, and he walks, he's weak. He's weak. He's a loser. He didn't persevere. Why? Because he walked away from a situation and he realized it's not advantageous to him. Now, all of a sudden, he's a weak man. You see what I'm saying? And that's the whole problem, in my opinion, with conservatism. Because they want a white male alpha their way through everything, even though literally it's been set up to make that shit fucking possible. And instead of acknowledging how the environment has been set up to make the situation impossible or what's the word, untenable, like they'll just tell you, no, you're not trying hard enough. That's what your problem is. That's like a police officer like handcuffing you, and like that midget on freaking cops, and it was like, I can break these cuffs. You can't break those cuffs. It's like the midget and shit, but literally it's like they put you in handcuffs, and then it's like at that point you should be saying to yourself, I'm arrested. I got handcuffs on me. I'm not getting out of these handcuffs. Right? Isn't that like the whole thing? Like, you need to comply, right? That's what conservatives say all the time. He should comply. He's not complying. Okay. Well, when somebody complies, they recognize that they're not in a position of power. But yet somehow the conservative rhetoric is he should be able to break. You see, if you was real, man, you'd be able to break through those cuffs. I'm wearing fucking I'm wearing steel cuffs. I got my hands behind my back. There is no, I can break these cuffs. I'm arrested. Now, if I was maybe a Houdini and, was able to pick my way out of a lock, then that's a different story. You know what I mean? But I'm not. So I'm not breaking Hulk's. I'm not going to say Hulk smash and then break out of the damn cuffs. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, there's so many scenarios I can give. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's 5 compartments. And then here comes the conservatives, with their, oh, you need to try harder and persevere and everything, and what about the pumps? The pumps only buy you time. That's what Sir Andrew said. The pumps only buy you time. Busted out the map, it's going to spill over each bulkhead from here to here until the ship fails. No matter what I do, the ship is going to... And here comes Ishmael. The ship can't sink. She's made of iron, sir. I can assure you she can, and she will. It is a mathematical certainty. And I love that scene because Sir Andrew, he brought up the math. He's like, you're going to argue with me? I'm the one that designed the goddamn ship. And that's what I don't get about all these conservative, like they're so caught up in their like belief system That they ignore the fact that like I'm like here you got these white folks. It's like you essentially are members of the group that designed the ship. Okay, the ship has freaking however many bulkheads, and the maximum number of bulkheads that the ship could stay afloat with are 4. The iceberg scraped the side of the ship, and now you got 5 bulkheads that have been compromised. What does that mean? That means this ship is going to sink. And somehow, some way, they want you to ignore that. Again, going back to my old examples, same thing in Apollo 13. We got to bring them down to 12 amps. You can't run a vacuum cleaner on 12 amps, John. Again, the man was using math. I've been looking at the data for an hour. We got to bring them down to 12 amps. Power is everything. If they don't have power, they can't change their trajectory. They can't turn around their heat shields. They can't communicate with us. We got to bring them down to 12 amps. It's the math. Can't argue with that. Oh, here comes the conservative. No, but with the sweet twinkle of Christ, anything is possible. No, you young men, you need to go out here and you need to man up, even though we're not looking to pay anybody. I'm like, math ain't mathing. It's not mathing. Then, you go over to Gone with the Wind. I believe it's hard winning a war with words, gentlemen. What does that mean to a gentleman? It means a great many things to a great many gentlemen, sir. Are you saying the Yankees can lick us? I'm saying very plainly they're better equipped than we are. They've got factories, shipyards, and a fleet that can bottle up our harbors and starve us to death. All we've got is cotton, slaves, and arrogance. Again, math prevails. You got to really think about that. Those white men were sitting in that room talking about how a Southerner can lick 20 Yankees. And Rhett came in and said, there's not a cannon factory in the whole South. Like, bottom line, like, you don't even have any guns and you don't have the factories to even produce the guns. And you talking about going to war. Fuck is you talking about? I love that scene. What are you talking about? And again, same thing. It's amazing. The disconnect. How all these conservative white people, they want to go back to, make America great again, but they don't want to pay anybody. They don't even want to pay young white men. You really got to wrap your heads around that. They do not want to pay young white men the type of wages that you would need to support a family, but yet you got white folks bitching about, we're going to get outvoted and we got to change the laws and we got to gerrymander because we ain't making enough white babies. We got to go in there and stop Wade versus Roe because, we not making enough white babies, or Roe v. Wade. We got to stop it. Because we got to get these white women back in the kitchen to produce our precious white babies. But we still ain't paying nobody. I'll tell you that right now. We ain't paying nobody. No sirree. We need to bring prayer back into the schools. That's what we need to do. But we still ain't paying nobody. Ain't nobody going to be making no money. But we need to have strong Christian families with strong Christian values, even though nobody can really pay their mortgage and be able to afford and put food on the table. But see, that doesn't matter because all you need is a sweet twinkle of Christ in your eye. As long as you got the sweet twinkle of Christ and you believe and you have faith and you in the Holy Spirit, then you should be able to make it because God's going to make it happen. I'll tell you that right now. Now, y'all, don't forget to spend your tithes, to give the church money, and make sure you give generously. Make sure you give generously to the church. And God will reward you 10 times over. But we still ain't paying y'all asses. I'll tell you that right now. We ain't paying y'all. But you need to give us 10% of whatever it is that you have. We're not paying y'all, but I'll tell y'all gonna be paying us. That's right, amen. like, like this world is stupid. It's stupid. White supremacy is stupid. Like white supremacy is like legit stupid. Like that's the part that gets me. Like it's legit stupid. I'm like, this is the superior race. This is how they operate. Again, see, like I said, I think white supremacy is a hologram. I think it's always been about classism and elite, white folks that, they don't give a fuck about what's going on with everybody else. Again, it goes back to that Might Makes Right video. They don't give a shit about anybody else. As long as they got their millions and their billions and their money and they're running shit. I'm telling you, it's going to look like Elysium out this bitch. It's going to be Matt Damon on dirty ass Earth, and all the rich ass white people are going to be living on some satellite ring in space. With regenerative machines and immortality and all that shit. I'm telling you that they're running around trying to figure out. Again, you want to see the evil scenario? Let wealthy people, because that's the number one thing wealthy people want. They want immortality. They already have the wealth. They already have the power. They have every tool at their disposal, because you can always pay half the poor to kill the other half. They have every tool in their arsenal to maintain power. The only problem is they don't live forever. See, if they lived forever, if they could be like vampires, you know what I'm saying? Like, then, they'd be able to rule, in perpetuity. It's like, again, like that joke that somebody made, talking about, why are vampires always rich? And it was like, if you're a if you were a vampire and you were born in 1870 and you're still broke in 2023, just walk into the sun. Just walk into the sun if you haven't figured out a way to make money after you've been living, for over 100 years. Just walk into the sun. But yeah, I don't know what else to say. I mean, like I said, the white guys, they think that they really do think, and I have to really just really drive the point home. No, I've said this all along. I said it was bullshit when they said it to black people, and it's bullshit when they say it to white people. They're going to personal responsibility it to death. I know personal responsibility is not a verb, but I'm making it a verb. They're going to personally responsibility it to death. That's what they're going to tell you, which means, AKA, I have no solution for you. Which means, AKA, you got to go out here and figure it out. And like I said, man, if 20% of your students are failing a class, you know what I mean, then yeah, chances are those students are just bad students. But when you got 80% of your students failing, you can't tell me that you can't look at the teacher and question the teacher. Why are 80% of the students failing? You can't blame the whole entire. That's not going to make sense. Really, only 20% of you. I know there's some teachers that are probably listening to this. I'm like, you tell me where you can fail 80% of a class and you still maintain your job. Somebody tell me where that's possible. So it's the same thing. If 80% of people are failing in a society, that means that there's something wrong with the matrix. There's something wrong with that society. There's something wrong with the way that it's set up. Now people want to sit there and they want to play games and, oh, we don't have to do anything and we can have a laissez-faire approach to, the way that things are going and, hands off and limited government and this, that, and that. Okay. I'm not saying that government would even have all of the solutions on how do you resolve this issue of this, the current sexual, dating market. But if you don't find some way to make young men attractive in the eyes of young women to the point that they get together, link up, start a family, you got a problem on your hands. Not just because you won't have future generations of children and you won't have these families, but you got a whole bunch of angry, disgruntled young men on your hands. And I'm going to keep on saying it. In my opinion, that is the primary reason why they want to enact gun control. They got to get rid of young white men getting access to these AR-15s. That's what they want to do, because they know that, because the next step is revolution. That's the next step. It's not there yet. People they're not hopeless yet. Not hopeless. They've given up, but they're not hopeless yet. They think that, they're just going to check out of society, and society is going to feel the pain. And then eventually society is going to beg men to come crawling back. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to beg, they're going to come, society is going to come crawling back to men and beg them to come back. That's how I wanted to say that. But I'm like, and if they don't, then what? Which I don't think society has a choice. I don't think it hasn't. Society hasn't felt the sting yet. You got Mike Rowell going up there bitching about, we got nobody in the vocational trades. Well, maybe if the society didn't shit on men working with their hands, you wouldn't have that. Or maybe if there wasn't so much bullshit when it comes to being able to get into the freaking trades and the way that they pay people and all that, even the union shit and everything else, like you make this much, and then after 5 years you make this much, and while you're training you only make this much because we're not paying you this, and dude's got to eat and he's got to live and all that other shit. Same shit that the guy was talking about with the pilot school, and he was making like $30,000 a year, and these are the guys that they got flying, the bait and switch that they do at the airport, thinking that you got this seasoned ex-Vietnam pilot flying your plane, and you got this freaking, 22-year-old that has like literally a fraction of the flight hours for him to be able to fly a plane that he's really not qualified to fly for, all because they want to cut costs. I mean, the shit is insane. But I just say that we're not there yet. We're not there, with shit being bad enough to where people actually want to change it. And what was I going to say? Something I was going to say about them wanting to change it. Honestly, I think that even if we got to that point, if it got to, it's too late. Like, it's just like with like black culture right now and street culture and all that other shit. Like, it's like, I'm like, you let the cement dry. Like, you marginalize a group of people, you keep them on the outside for so long, they're going to form a new culture. And from black people's culture currently is based off of prolonged exposure to poverty. And, the cement has dried. There's a lot of shit about black culture, with the street culture, black culture, whatever you want to call it, that I don't like. I mean, street culture is the dominant black culture that exists in the black community. But, there's no real other way for people to be when that's how they're living. I love the people that jump up and try to tell you that you should be behaving based on an idea that is not reflective of the reality that you're actually living in real life. Despite the fact that you live in poverty, you should function and operate as though you're rich. Like, that doesn't make any sense. But yet people will try to push that idea that somehow those without resources should think, behave, and operate the same as those with resources. It's dumb. It's not going to happen. And white people, like, what makes white people even more full of shit is white people are the ones that have written all the psychology books on all this shit. They know. They know what happens when you put people in adverse situations and circumstances. And they're the ones that came up with all the Pavlov's dog and the bell and all that other shit. They're the ones that came up with all that shit. Positive, negative feedback, the freaking Stanford experiments and all that shit. They came up with all that shit. They did all the Siegfried and what's the guy's name? Was it Siegfried? The fucking psychologist and shit. All the founding psychologists are white males, so they know. You know what I mean? But they like to come online and pretend, that everybody else is dumb and doesn't recognize this shit, namely black people. But like I said, I'm still blown away that they're actually trying to run this game on their own fucking grandchildren. I'm still blown away at that. I'm blown away at that. We owe you nothing. You sound like the blacks. I'm like, you owe them nothing. I'm like, you're not even giving people due compensation. You're trying to cut costs. Like, what are you talking about? We owe you nothing. This guy didn't say he's trying to get paid for doing nothing. No, he's saying I'm not getting paid enough to fucking live and raise a family. And then you're bitching about, there's not enough white children. Oh, we're like, insanity, man. It's just insane. I'm still blown away by this shit. But anyway, I'm rambling on. I need to end this video. So let me end it. That's all I got to say. That's my video. SWP out. Don't forget to comment, share, like, and subscribe.